Well, folks, the first domino has fallen. We're going to talk about the indictment of Kevin Clinesmith and his plea. This is bigger than you might realize. Anyway, stick with me, folks, and I'll get to it in a minute. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and it's just been such a great day here. So let me get going on this. I've got lots of tabs open as usual, lots of headlines, lots of news, and I want to get to all of them, so here we go. The first one, I wanted to just share this with you because I think this is a really good thought that Kayleigh McEnany put out there. I won't get distracted by politics. Prayer makes the difference. So please remember that, folks, in the next few days, weeks, months, whatever the case is, we need to keep things in perspective. And sometimes that means we got to step back and we've got to really see where the power is and what's going on, because as this first person says, yes, it does. God is still on his throne. So we need to remember that, keep things in perspective, because we're going to go through an interesting time in the next few months here leading up to this election. And I'm sure you're already aware of that. But yeah, prayer makes the difference. Remember that. Speaking of praying, how about some praying medic? Okay. Now, I know some of you probably follow him. I'm not sure if you do or not. But, I noticed that he's not been on the Twitter feed very much lately. I haven't seen any from him. So I went looking for him. And yes, he's still there. Because, at this point, you don't know if people are getting booted or what, because so many are. I mean, we've lost several of the higher ups, some of the bigger names out there. And so I did find this from Praying Medic, and he says, didn't see that coming. Yeah, right. Look what they're doing here. They're going to lay siege to the White House for exactly 50 days, starting on September 17th. Yeah, so there we go, folks. They're going to lay siege. I think maybe we need some patriots to go lay siege too. Well, maybe to lay siege on the seizures. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so I wanted to share that with you, but then I also really wanted to share this with you, and I'm sorry I can't play it on. It's like an hour and a half long, but I really, really, really want you to go to this, and this is a Brenden Dilly broadcast here, and it's about an hour and a half long, I think, but go to about 8:20. That's where he plays a clip of Barr, and then they get into talking about things, because it is really important to hear this, and especially if Casey is listening. Casey, you gotta hear this, because you keep saying there aren't any arrests. I got news for you. Praying Medics hit it right on the nose here. There have been we're saying we're waiting for these indictments. Well, what's happened, and I'm going to summarize this, but you really need to hear Praying Medics say it, because Dave does a much, much better job on this than I do. So essentially, the deal is, when you are indicted on something, and if you plead guilty, then there is no trial. And when you plead guilty to something, then look at what happened to Flynn. He pled guilty. They gave him conditions. He abided by those conditions. He fulfilled what he was supposed to be doing. And then they do sentencing. And what Praying Medic says is he believes that there have been all of these people who have been removed from power and then eventually fired have already been indicted. It's just that they have pled guilty and are cooperating witnesses. That's what that means, that they've already been indicted. They have pled guilty. They're in a plea deal situation right now, and they're supposed to be fulfilling their plea deal conditions, and then they will be sentenced. So a lot of them, if you noticed, what happened was they were still working at the FBI, they were testifying, and all these different things, and then when they were done, they were fired. So they were like demoted or something like that first, and then they were fired. And that's what has been going on. Every time they were fired, that's when they were fulfilling their plea deal. It was finished, and that's when they were fired. So anyway, like I said, Dave explains it a whole lot better than that because he goes through more of the legal aspect of it and everything. But I wanted to leave this for you, and I haven't heard the whole thing yet, but what I did hear, it's well worth watching the whole episode. They kind of banter at first. That's why it doesn't really start until 8:20. But, really at 8:20 for about the next 10 to 20 minutes, they do a really good job of talking about this. And Casey, if you're listening, that's the part you really need to listen to, okay? Because there are things happening. And the deal is with him, with Kevin Clinesmith, he actually is much bigger than a lot of people understand. And as Adam Housley says here, lowest big name, okay? Lowest big name. So they are getting to the big names, but they're starting with the low man on the totem pole, and he was actually the lowest on that list. But don't worry, they're going to be moving up. Despite what you hear, what came out today is a big deal. He isn't a small name. Crosses party lines. I told you it was coming. And I do expect there to be some crossing of party lines here. Now, I don't know if that means that Kevin Clinesmith was a Republican. I don't know what he means here by crosses party lines other than that. But there will have to be some from both sides. And I think that's going to be a key in this, because if you only have Democrats that you are, going to be arresting, then it does look like a political hit job. But if you do it where anybody who is guilty is arrested, no matter what party they're with, that's going to be huge. And with Kevin Clinesmith, he was not only on the Crossfire Hurricane thing, but he was also on the Mueller team, I believe. So he really is kind of a linchpin. Now, what I've been hearing is that he is talking and he is giving information. He's implicated others on Crossfire Hurricane who ultimately hid the exculpatory evidence from the FISA court is the question. Who gave the order? Who was it that really did it? I think Kevin here is probably going to be outing anybody he can to save himself. And, that's what happens. The first one indicted actually gets to be in a good position because then they can rat on all the others. And, sometimes you have to do that, make deals with them. But here's the thing. I want you to think about this. We all know that there is this Gmail account out there that they were all sharing. How is that going to be entered into evidence? Well, I think maybe if Kev here decides to turn in some documents and say, hey guys, here are the documents. I can prove who was really at the top of this. Look what's going to happen. So I think possibly that he may be a key to getting the Gmail account and, testifying that it was really there. All the things that are in that were part of their attempt to stop Trump. He's the guy that said Vive la Resistance. It just hurts me to say it that way. Vive la Resistance. I mean, he really messed it up. He didn't say it right because it's Vive with an E at the end. And then it's instead of L-E, it should be la Resistance. So, I'm sorry, French teacher and me. Got to do that. But anyway, so very good article here and that information. Sidney got her 2 cents in here. She had this post by this Joseph Roll, and he says, Clinesmith's lawyer, Justin Schur, told the Associated Press that his client will plead guilty to a single false statements charge as part of a cooperation agreement with the government. And so she responds and says, huge problem. His lawyer also says he denied it was knowing and intentional. Judge cannot accept that plea. Someone is not shooting straight. Highly suspicious. Indict him now on it all. Well, again, I think probably already has been indicted. So anyway, then Techno Fog mentions this, and he says, important excerpt from the Kevin Clinesmith criminal information. On 8/17/16, the CIA informed the Crossfire Hurricane team that Carter Page had been a CIA source. They hid this fact from the FISA court. I bet the DOJ will invalidate the first 2 visas. Oh, it's coming together, folks. It really is. I think that's huge because they knew 8/17/16, August 17th, they knew, and yet they still perpetuated it. So, it's just starting to all come out and come together. Well, here's another one that Sidney Powell mentioned because she had to respond to this. Andrew Weissmann is out there trying to, of course, discredit everything and to stick up for Kevin Clinesmith and say, it wasn't his fault. It was just a mistake. And it's like, yeah, right. Question for Barr: how are Flynn's confessed lies to the FBI repeated to the VP not a crime, but Clinesmith changing an email, the full version of which he also sent to DOJ, is? And so she comes back because she's you're not going to attack Flynn and not get something from Sidney. And she says that you would pose this question only demonstrates your pathetic lack of ethics, legal knowledge, and the rule of law. And then she puts the hashtag unfit to practice, hashtag Flynn was framed, and you know it. You orchestrated the deceitful prosecution, coercion, and calculated suppression of exculpatory evidence. Oh, she's not happy about that. And then here's a video. If you haven't had a chance to see this was kind of good because this is Devin Nunes' perspective on this. And he really believes, and I believe also, that there are many, many more to come. And this was just the first one. And like Housley said, I really think this was the lowest big guy that they could get. And that's the first one to fall. The rest of them, they're coming. I'm telling you, they really are. And then I wanted to show you this because the conservative team here says Attorney General Barr has Democrats sweating. They think Barr could be preparing to launch an October surprise. Well, if he does, I think it's going to be before October. That's my opinion on that one. I'm pretty sure that they had planned it for July or August. And then COVID stepped in and they had a little trouble with their grand juries. But I do think that, a bunch of people have already been through the grand juries. Kevin Clinesmith already, had a grand jury on him. They turned back an indictment, and that's how all this is coming out. I think that everyone that was actually fired at this point, has already done all the stuff they had to do. They were indicted. They signed a plea deal. And they finished up what they had to do, and then they were fired. And I think the ones that were fired, that's what's going on. I don't know what the terms are for the sentencing, because just like Flynn, you remember, Flynn's plea deal was back in 2017, in December of 2017. So it's taken this long, and Flynn was up 4 or 5 times for sentencing. So I anticipate the sentencing has not happened yet. So if you think that they're getting off scot-free, I got news for you. They are going to be held accountable. And they already are in some ways. Now, why hasn't Bruce Orr been booted out yet? Why hasn't he been fired? Because he's not done yet. He's still been testifying to different committees and he's still doing stuff. But what they do is they just kind of put them in a basic job where they don't do anything. And so they're kind of, you go in your office, you sit there, and that's what you do. So it's kind of, in some ways, I think like a house arrest or a work arrest or whatever. But anyway, so in my opinion, I think it's not going to be October. I think it's going to be before that. I'm pretty sure. And back on the Brenden Dilly show, that they were talking with Praying Medic, he was saying that because Barr has been so consistent about when this is supposed to come out. I mean, he hasn't been saying, well, it's not coming out yet. It's not coming out yet. He has been giving the same basic range of time every time that he talks about it. And that is sometime, before the election. So I don't know when it's going to be, but I tend to think that they're not going to wait until right before the election in October, because that would appear too much to be meddling in the election. And there are other things coming out all the time, like this right here. There is a reporter, somebody who works for InfoWars, And and her husband were arrested, reportedly indicted by a grand jury. That's what the police said, that they had been indicted for burglary. And she had no clue about it. And she was actually streaming it when it was happening. And so you can watch it. This guy right here has it. And you can click on this and it will show you the video of her. And it was kind of sad because they took her away and her little boy's standing there on the porch and he didn't know what was going on, but they were taking mom away. And she kept asking. It was really weird. They didn't read her any rights. I just don't know. I've never been arrested, so I don't know how it works, but it seemed odd to me, the whole thing. But anyway, she was getting ready to put out something called Shadowgate. And here's the video. I recommend you watch this soon. Okay, very, very soon. I don't know how long it's going to stay up. And it is about an hour and a half long, hour and 22 minutes. And this was just ready to come out. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet myself, but I saw the researchers talking about it and they were like, wow, it's got everything in there. And they were talking about, especially has something about the Keystone. So, I don't know. Again, I haven't watched it. I watched a trailer for it. And yeah, it mentioned a lot of things that we all know. So I highly recommend you watch this. And again, watch it soon because I don't know how long it'll last. Okay, I need to deal with this because there are a lot of people in the comments who are putting this down. Be really careful with this. Here's the deal, okay? We have, qualifications for a president, and the vice president has to have the same qualifications as a president. Well, the deal is, Newsweek had an editorial that was put out by Professor Eastman, and his idea was that Kamala Harris is not eligible because she's not a natural-born citizen. Well, the thing is, it has to do with the current interpretation of natural-born citizen, all right? There are two thoughts out there, two lines of thought. One line says, to be a natural-born citizen means both of your parents have to be U.S. citizens, and then that would make you a natural-born citizen, okay? The other thought is that when people are born here in the United States, they automatically gain U.S. citizenship. And that's where we get the concept of anchor babies. We have those two lines of thought. The difference is, right now, currently accepted thought is interpreting the whole thing as meaning that it's the person who is born here in the United States. Now, whether you agree with that or not, okay, I don't agree with that, and I'm thinking most of you don't. That's still the interpretation. That's currently how it's interpreted right now. It's not been altered, and that's the way decisions have been falling. Now, I don't know if the Supreme Court has ruled on it or not, but that is something that a lot of people are going to be questioning. And this is what the 14th Amendment actually says. It says all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. Okay, that's according to the 14th Amendment. So a lot of people forget about the subject to the jurisdiction thereof. But again, that has many meanings, or it can be construed differently, depending on how the people are viewing it. So there's a lot of leeway here. And currently, the current thinking right now has been for several years now that when they say natural born citizen, it just means somebody who was born here in the United States. Now, I agree with you as you're thinking it, that subject to the jurisdiction thereof would mean that the people that are having the child also are citizens. However, again, I gotta tell you, it's just not really how things are currently being interpreted with that particular phrase. So is she eligible? I think she is. I would like her not to be, but she is. And I don't think it's something that we really need to be focusing on. I'm really surprised that he put this in here and that Newsweek has allowed it to stay up. They give you this note, explains why it's not accurate, and so they did have to put a note in with it, but this gives you a big chunk of it, and you can see. Now, the reason is because neither of her parents, far as I could find, were ever made citizens of the United States. Okay? Her father was Jamaican and continued to be Jamaican. They came here originally in about 1960. I think her mother came in 1960 and her father came in 1961 or something like that. And then she was born in 1964. So it was several years before she was born. They were working on educational degrees. And so it wasn't that they were permanent residents at the time. And so there's a question about it. It may have to end up going to the Supreme Court because it is questionable on this one. And I know that they had the whole thing about McCain, but McCain was born, both of his parents were U.S. citizens, and he was born on U.S. soil. Makes a huge difference, too. Even though it wasn't U.S. soil here in the United States, in the continental United States, it was on a military base, which military bases are U.S. soil. So, anyway, yeah, I'll leave this so you can read about it because I think it's important for us to get it straight and to know the facts. We've got to be careful. I mean, we want that to be true, that she's not eligible, but friends, really, please don't rely on that. You know, we've got to set our emotions aside and what we want and go with what the facts are. And the current interpretation of that is that it means somebody who was born here. And since there's no question that she was born here, yeah, she is eligible. So we'll let the Supreme Court say differently if they have to. Well, I wanted to show you this because Catherine Herridge says that 215 federal riot cases were charged as of August 14th. They include arson, destruction of federal property, assaulting a federal law enforcement officer, assaulting U.S. Marshal, attempt to burn down a police precinct, disorderly conduct, etc. And there are the documents. You can go through and you can see them. She has even more here, that you can see. So I will leave those down below. You can look at them at your leisure. Then I wanted to show you this. Guess what? There's a House Democrat who has filed criminal referral accusing Trump of subverting the election. Okay? Because he thinks that because President Trump and the U.S. Postal Service's chief, Louis DeJoy, alleging they have possibly subverted the November election. So this is the guy here, Bill Pascrell Jr., and he made a criminal referral to the New Jersey Attorney General and asked him to impanel a grand jury to look at subversion of New Jersey election laws by Donald Trump. Look at that. He didn't even capitalize Donald Trump or Louis DeJoy. That is just so insulting. It's ridiculous. So here are the documents if you want to go through and you want to read them. Yeah, that's what they do. Another crazy Democrat, but there they are. So I'll let you look at that. And if you want to go see the documents, you just click on that and it'll take you to the actual thing where you can look at the documents, okay? This one was interesting. Paul Sperry tweeted this out, but then it was deleted. And I don't know if he deleted it or if the powers that be deleted it or whatever. But it seems to indicate that Kamala's sister is taking a certain drug every day. Huh. Gee. Interesting, right? So anyway, and then it was deleted. So again, can't say that it's still there. I can't direct you to it, but I can give you that page at least. And then I wanted to share this with you because this is one of the doctors who has spoken out for that particular drug. And yeah, she was fired because they said her services as an emergency physician will no longer be required. A lot of people have lost their jobs over this. It's crazy. So, support her if you can. It just is one of those things, even if you can put an encouraging note down here in the tweet, in the Twitter thread, please do so because she really tried to get the truth out there, and now she's being, she was fired because of it. It's a crazy world we live in. All right, and then I want to share this with you. I'm not going to play it because he uses some bad language, but he's very concerned about children and their safety. And I think he makes a really good point because he's talking about how many deaths there have been from COVID and then comparing that to how many children are trafficked. And I think he makes a really good thought here that people need to think about such things. People are so upset about COVID. Are they as upset about the children? Yeah. Shouldn't they be? And by the way, Save the Children is now being censored, kind of, because Facebook has stopped people from using it. If you post a hashtag with that in there, they'll just delete it or something. I don't know what happens. I think it goes in the Facebook memory hole. And I'm not sure really what happens when you do it here, but yeah, it's being censored because they don't like people that are talking about it because they say they're fringe conspiracy theorists. Yeah. But, the facts are out there. The children are being trafficked. We know that. I mean, that's just factual. Anyway, I wanted to share this with you because I think this is really important. Guess what? Twitter followers. Joe Biden has 8.3 million. Kamala Harris has 4.8 million. By the way, she has two accounts. That is her main account, and then her Senate account only has 1.8 million. So, in all fairness, she actually has, 6.6? Is that right? And then Trump, 85.1 million. So tell me again how they're winning in all the polls. I just don't see it. I really don't. And then I wanted to share this with you just because somebody asked in the comments, I mentioned it. Yeah, Jim Acosta actually is listed on the IMDb as an actor. Okay? And they said, how do you know it's him? His picture. Okay? It really is him. He really is an actor. He was in House of Cards, and, it lists these other things. I'm telling you, he's an actor. And you would not believe how many of these news people are out there. Put them in here, and you'll see many of them have acting careers. Are we surprised? No. And the last thing I really have for you is this, but I think this is spectacular, and I want to thank Stephen Moore for this. Good job pointing this out to me in the comments. It's really interesting. Did you know there is a rough draft of the Declaration of Independence? Yeah. Well, as a writer, I understand rough drafts. You have to go through, you put your thoughts down on paper, and then you got to go back and you got to make them sound nicer. And so that's what happened. They had an original rough draft, and it has some differences in it. We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. Just doesn't have the same ring, does it? So, yes, it does sound better in the original. But here's the deal. Everything in this Declaration of Independence had to be approved by all 13 colonies. Okay, it was an all or nothing thing. So everything in there had to be approved by everyone. Well, the problem was he had a paragraph down here that, he's listing all the things that King George was guilty of. Well, he has a paragraph down here, and I'm going to bring it up here so you can see it better. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. This piratical warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare of the Christian king, notice he puts Christian all in capital letters, of Great Britain, determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold. And so, he was attributing the term men to the slaves. which I think is fantastic. This shows that the founding fathers saw slavery as something horrible that needed to be addressed and abolished. So, if you look here, you keep going in it. He is prostituted as negative for suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or to restrain this execrable commerce, and that this assemblage of horrors might want no fact of distinguished dye, he is now exciting those very people to rise in arms among us and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them, and murdering the people upon whom he also obtruded them, thus paying off former crimes committed against the liberties of one people with crimes which he urges them to commit against the lives of another. So we can see here in this paragraph that they were very clearly wanting to abolish slavery. The problem was there were two states, South Carolina and I think it was Georgia, that wouldn't approve of this particular paragraph. So in the final draft, it was taken out. So that's the story. And here's an article that the Blaze did on it back in July. And so here's a video where he explains all that. Okay? So I wanted to share that because I think that's just stellar. That was a great find. Thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate you finding that and bringing it to my attention. So that's what I've got for y'all on this. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to put a new Patriot, small channel in here right now. It just, it was a long day and it's getting late and I really need to finish this up. So I'll get one next time. Don't worry, I'll have it on the next video. So anyway, I want to thank you for stopping by and I'll see y'all later.